Hi, Bria. Hi, Ann. Welcome, everyone. I'm Brian Miller, owner of Full Circle Gallery and Full Circle Fine Art. We're here in Baltimore, and we're joined today for a virtual artist talk with Bria Sterling-Wilson. Bria, can you wave?
Hi, everyone.
And we're also joining us today is Ann Schaefer, who's an independent business and curatorial consultant. And
Hi, everyone.
we're here with everyone. Joining us today is we're getting a little bit of feedback. Some of the consultant audio.
Hi, everyone.
We're here with everyone. Joining us today is we're getting a little bit of feedback.
Wow, what is going on?
Consultant audio.
Hi, everyone.
We're here with everyone. It's coming from you.
Wow, what is going on?
Audio. We're here with everyone. Bear with us for just a second. We'll take care of it.
Wow, what is going on? Oh no.
Audio. And turn your mic off. Bear with us for just a second. Okay. So we're going to work through a couple of these difficulties with a little volume on and off if we can. And that's right, Ann. It's a little DJ like. Bria, I'm going to ask you your first question if you're ready. And I thought it would be really helpful for everyone to describe a little bit about where you make your collage works. Kind of give us a description of what this place is like, wherever it is, and how it facilitates you in working.
Well, I'm here in my studio right now, which is my mom's house. And I use the kitchen area. She has like a large table that I put newspaper down, and I make sure it's nice and covered, and I just work in my kitchen. And I kind of do a lot of work at night when everyone's sleeping, and I have that tranquility to just be in here by myself and collage until like 3 in the morning time.
Do you tend to work with like a large pile of materials, or do you have a collection of materials that you separate? Are you cutting things and pulling things and organizing them, or is it way more fluid and intuitive each time you want to work?
It's a bit of both. I have crates of magazines that I've collected over a few years now, and I also will go to Barnes and Noble or the grocery store, 7-Eleven, picking up newspaper or magazines, and then I come home and I'll go through all of them and I'll start cutting out certain things, and then I'll refer back to my other magazines that I have in the crates and see, I might remember something that was in there, and I'll go bring that back. If I start to compile a collage that I really like, I'll be able to contextualize an idea from those.
I think I'm back.
You are.
And I think it was all my fault, and I am so sorry. I had YouTube open and I forgot to close it. I'm so sorry.
We brought you on as a business and curatorial consultant, not a technical one. So please go ahead.
It was good to have a laugh before, so it's okay.
Broke the ice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you compartmentalize like images? I think that's part of one of my questions. Like, do you compartmentalize what you're seeing somewhere in your brain, or like physically put it away?
Yes, sometimes I do. When I go searching for magazines, I'll typically sometimes think of an idea that I want to talk about, or if I know I want to refer to racism, or if I want to refer to police brutality, I make sure that I'm searching for those type of images that could help bring that together in my collage. But really a lot of it is by chance that I come across something that I'm able to use. And a lot of course, my images are appropriated images, and I enjoy that element of collage because I'm able to recontextualize something that meant something for something else, and now I'm turning it into a whole new idea and a whole new collage.
I like the idea of cutting up pictures from mass-produced magazines and recontextualizing them into something that's a unique work of art, you know, even though those images proliferate in bazillions of numbers.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's a weird, like, ooh, conceptual circle that corkscrews somehow.
And that's what I enjoy about it a lot, is having that control and having that intimacy with those pieces, as well as, you know, with traditional photography, I feel like there's so many parts that you have to get together to create a beautiful image. And with this, I'm able to kind of cut down on having to find a model and having to find a location and all of these things to bring a beautiful image together. I can just go get the magazines and sift through. I'd rather sift through a bunch of magazines and find exactly what I want, and instead of having to do all of those other things that come with traditional photography. Even though I do enjoy traditional photography, that's always going to be my first love.
Sure. Do you cut out pictures and save them, or do you sort of go through and find specific things to use right then?
Do you mean that I save the
Like
magazine?
you go through Vogue or Essence or whatever and cut out everything that looks interesting and sort of sort them into piles of...
Yes, I do. Definitely. Like I'll have a magazine. I will go through each page, just looking through, and when I see something, cut it out, keep going, and that just happens consistently until I am able to make something of those pieces. And I'm sorry I didn't turn my notifications off like Brian told me to. We definitely need to do that. Now I'm listening, Brian. I'm gonna multitask.
Sure. This is sort of catapulting off of what Anne's talking about, this intersection between photography and collage. Does photography not satisfy you in a way that collage does more, because you're, this more stained glass, fractured vision of these ideal scenes isn't really possible through the act of photography, even though you have a passion for the medium and the imagery. The act of photographing doesn't quite satisfy what's going on up here.
Yes, I feel like collage makes it able for me to create a multi-layer medium where, I mean, you could do that with the computer, I guess, taking photographs and then using Photoshop or something to do that. But I don't get an enjoyment out of that. Like, I like physically being able to move the pieces around with my own hands, like having those tangible things to create something. Computer art is cool, but I like to physically do it myself. And I'm expressing the Black experience in Black culture, which is a multifaceted culture and experience. So I feel like collage lets me express those.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's like a shattered glass. It sort of radiates out. So like you have all of these pieces that point into some issue that you're trying to tackle, or it fractures an idea. Like, it works both ways conceptually. Yes,
exactly.
Yeah, well, I mean, collage is one of my questions I had written down was, it wasn't prefaced to you, Bria, but this idea, like, when you're working in collage, is it more important that you're tearing something up or that you're putting something together? Both in the metaphorical context, but in the physical context as well. Like, what act is more important to you?
That's a good question. I didn't. That wasn't on our list, Brian.
Sorry.
Wow. Yeah, I think it's both. I don't know. I've never thought about that. I think I enjoy both of those aspects of being able to, you know, break down stereotypes and break down the experiences, and I guess make it more of an easier pill for people to swallow when they see these things. Because I feel like when you talk about race, or when you talk about police brutality, or when you talk about stereotypes, I think it's a tough conversation for some people to be able to have. And I think that my collages make it easier for that conversation to be had. So yeah, that's like my thinking process behind it.
I agree. And I mean, I think that's, you know, one of the interests for us. I totally apologize. If I can interject, I forgot to introduce the woman behind the scenes, Liz Faust, who's controlling all of our technical stuff here today. She's the gallery manager and assistant curator here at Full Circle. When Liz and I started getting interested in your work, it was the fact that you were tearing apart, breaking these things down, and putting them back in a way that wasn't so overt that it was overstimulating. They're very
Right.
inviting. The images you create are very inviting. And in some sense, some of them are fun. I don't want to say like the ones that are very serious, like hands up, don't shoot, or some of the more stereotype work. But in general, they're very playful, and collage allows you to do that. And so the work engages you very quickly because they're visually interesting, and they tease the brain like, oh, what's going on here? And then you get into these much heavier topics, you know. So the 2D part of it brings you in, and then there's this whole other world going on that you're trying to introduce us to and possibly re-educate us on.
Yes.
And I think that's what's really fascinating about the work.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Did we, during the whole YouTube snafu that I'm responsible for, I'm so sorry, did we say out loud that people should be placing questions in the comments, and we'll try and get to them either at the end, or if I can manage to do both, I will get them now.
You have now done it. Thank you.
I have now done it.
Well, you brought up some of the more important topics in the work that you're dealing with. Should we talk about one that's most important to you, maybe?
Would you like me to reference a piece, or would you like me to reference? Okay.
Yeah, let's talk about.
Ooh, let's see. I'm looking at my list. We can talk about. Well, I'll start with number one. We can start with "You're Pretty for a Black Girl."
Okay, great. I think Liz is going to bring that up for us. Tell us about the beginnings of the piece, and then maybe we can go from there.
Sure. I wanted to talk about stereotypes and identity and beauty standards that I think are placed upon Black women, like feeling the need that you have to straighten your hair to be beautiful, or our texture of our hair is not accepted, which now I feel like in social media, curly hair is coming back, and textured hair and being comfortable with yourself is all the rage now, which, you know, when I was younger, that was not the case. Like, I was kind of ashamed of having not straight hair because I went to a predominantly white school. So everyone I was around had like beautiful straight hair. And I was like, well, I want to straighten my hair too. And I should have never like thought that I needed to do that. But, you know, that's how I was thinking. And I like to talk about that in my work. And in this piece, it's very, it has like an ambiguity about it. Like, you don't know if this is a man or a woman, or it could be a trans person. So I also wanted to reference like trans life as well, and because I feel like it gets ignored a lot, and I wanted to reference that in this as well. And
That's
skin tone. Sorry.
Complex. No, that's okay. I was just saying it's fairly complex. You bring it all up in one piece. Mm-hmm. And I think that that ambiguity that you're talking about is what's most engaging here. You don't know. From one perspective, you're like, there's that dichotomy that you're trying to figure out. Is this a man or a woman? Why does it matter if it's a man or a woman? There's this idea of like this beautiful long blonde hair on a black-skinned person or a dark-skinned person, and you didn't choose to use a color image here. You chose a black and white image, so it's dark and it's chiaroscuro on the face and everything, and there's a dainty pull with the fingers on the dress, but this big, almost mannish arm coming out the side. Yeah, thank you.
And another reason that I like to use black and white images, it's to show emphasis on other parts of the collage, so that it gets your attention as well.
But in this case, the face is that's where you go immediately, right?
Yeah.
You sort of see this. To me, I'm sort of reading it as a little unsure, or a little like it's a, as Brian said, an ambiguous kind of countenance, right? Which just throws everything off. Like you don't know if the tug of the skirt is a tug of the skirt, or oh crap, my hoo-ha showing, or whatever it is. Like it's, to me, it hits every note that you want. You can't quite figure out what's going on.
Yes.
And that's its strength, Bria.
It is definitely a strength, and I'm curious when you're working, talking a little bit about your process and this compiling. Are you working with these in your head and intuitively bringing everything together, or are you very focused on the topic of physical attributes? You're like, I'm working on this. In your head, this little gears are going around. You're like, am I working on this for this reason, or is the artwork leading you towards the end?
More of the artwork leading me toward the end. I definitely, with this piece, there wasn't like a game plan for me to have this be the end result. I found the picture of the young woman, and then I was like, well, I want to juxtapose different hair. So I shifted through, found some hair. Then I was like, well, what body can I put with this? What can I compose with this body? But I want it to be different from what the original image is. So I'm finding that, and I'm like, okay. And the body is actually RuPaul's body. So I was like, okay, this looks great. Let me cut this out, put this here. And then I wanted more color, and I wanted to break that black and white, because both of those images are black and white. I didn't want it to be completely, that whole thing black and white. So I found a young woman's breast and put there, and all those things. And then once I start seeing where it's going, I'm like, all right, these are the things that I can talk about with this piece. Or if I try to kind of put myself in the place of the viewer and see like what things they might get from it. And I also like show like a bunch of different people after I create a piece. Like I talk to them and say like, what do you think about this piece? And what do you feel from this? And what do you get from it? And then that's where I'm like, all right, this falls into the categories of like what I want to talk about.
I think intuitive art making is an underrated process these days.
It is, because I'm still a student, so I feel like in class we're always told like you need to have a reason, you need to have this, and you should be able to talk about this and why you did it. And I just always feel like an intuition is a big part of what I do.
I think that's okay. I wanted to ask one question that came through the chat box from your mentor, Antonio, who wondered if you, yes, hi, Antonio, wanted to know if you ever dig for magazines from time periods like the 80s or the 70s, and whether or not that could be fodder for you too.
I wish I could get my hands on some. It's so hard to find unless you go online and go to eBay, or someone that has like an old dusty collection of magazines that you can have, because I would love to be able to do that. So if anyone watching has any magazines that are very old, please hit me up. I will take
Well,
that.
yeah, right. He also says that he thinks the book thing might be helpful. Have you wandered around in there, that crazy place?
Oh,
Over.
no, I haven't.
Yeah.
That's an idea. Maybe that would be a good treasure hunt one day.
Yeah.
Definitely. It will. I'm writing that down right now.
Yeah, I mean, it is problematic to go on eBay and spend $50 on a copy of Life magazine from 1960. Like, that makes no sense.
And then you don't even know what's in it. Like, you can't. Now that would really put me in a pickle if I wasn't able to see what I'm buying. So that's why I've been hesitant.
But I do like the idea of digging back in time. That would be really interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because
I think Brian was trying to say something.
Oh, sorry.
I said be careful what you ask for.
Oh.
Start for stuff and stuff starts showing up at your mom's house and you're like, what's going on?
Exactly.
But I think that's an interesting point that the chat question brings up. However, you are working on topics that are contemporaneous, and I think it's important that the imagery be relevant, and you're representing a younger generation coming up in the world, and I think that it's really important to feature the images that are out there now. What people are wearing and taking from real life now. And I'm thinking, I'm sitting here looking across from the iPad at the hands up, and maybe Liz can bring that up for us. Hands up, don't shoot. And it's a pretty intense photo. I was talking with someone who popped into the gallery the other day to see your show, and they were really fascinated with this piece. The jacket being pulled up over the person's face. They didn't, first of all, the ambiguity of who it might be, who that particular person is now anonymous, and maybe becomes an every person, right? An every guy. But they didn't notice at first the hands yanking the jacket over this person's head.
And a lot of people don't see that part. Like, I've had people look at that and they're like, I don't get it at first. And I'm like, well, go ahead and look a little longer, please.
Yeah. The whole idea of this person being framed physically and in the most straightforward, metaphorical sense. It's a pretty, it's probably one of your strongest politically sensitive images. So maybe just talk to us a little bit about this piece.
Yeah. This one had a lot of intuition with it as well, but I knew that I wanted this happened around when George Floyd was murdered, killed, and I was like enraged at the time, and I immediately was like, I've got to make something, like I've got to express this through my collage. And this is what I came up with. And then I was just thinking, like, what would the ancestors think seeing like that nothing has changed? And that's when I found the picture, those pieces there of the older generation in the back, and I was like, all right, this would be perfect to put back here, and like it would be like shock, like looking onto what's going on. And then this is America, like this is how people of color are living. So I always like to reference like having a flag of some sort, and I loved the motion in that flag, and I thought that was like perfect, giving it so it wasn't so flat, so making it look like it was waving. And what else? And then at first, I didn't have the two hands up. So without it, I was like, I think it still needs to drive home what I'm talking about. So I wanted to have like the hands up, and that's why I called it that, like hands up, don't shoot. And it's Black males that still get shot, even though they're not doing anything. They're not reaching for anything. They're running away. They're scared because they don't want to die, but they get killed regardless.
And the frame around all this, it's not that they were framed for this event. It's it's this larger context of what is framing this aspect in America? What is holding this together? What is holding these ideas in place? And for
Right.
me, that's where this frame comes in, is just constricting this idea that this is the way it is. And though some things have changed in our experience, the violence and the disproportionate life experience is still there.
Yes.
So, I didn't really notice at first that the images of the people in the background actually don't look like they're, wearing like a puffy jacket type of thing. It does look like the images are from a different time, and the faded flag with the light, there is something like in the past in the background behind the work.
Yeah, and like the images of the people, it's more like a worn out paper texture, so it gives it like that older like look to it, which helped a lot push what I was referring to further. Like you see, it looks like it's been like crumpled and all of that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think using those figures in the back makes absolute sense, since there's a very strong through line from slavery to mass incarceration. I mean, there's been changes in what it looks like or what it sounds like, but it's been the same thing since 1619, right?
Right.
So I think having the sort of two ends of it within the frame make complete sense.
Yes, definitely.
We had also a note from Doreen Bolger, my former boss, who recommends Normal's bookstore for a place that might have some source material for you. We're going to get all kinds of answers.
They are going to help me out big time. It's called, is that in the group chat? I'm sorry, I'm looking.
Yeah, it's in comments.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Since we're talking about source material, I know you and Anne had talked a little bit about it, and you had also talked to Terry Henderson from Be More Art for a recent article that they did this past week about some of your influences. So not that you're using that as source material, but maybe you could talk a little bit and reference some other artists or collage artists that have spurred you on in thinking about your own work.
Yeah, so I was, of course, originally introduced to Picasso as like the first collage artist, if you may, and George Braque. And then I fell in love with Hannah Hawk and the Dada movement. And then I started just deep diving into other collage artists and trying to research, and school helped a lot with that, and coming across different artists that I'd never heard of. So then I came across James Gallagher. I just love his work, especially with newspaper. And then Deborah Roberts is amazing. She's just amazing. That's all I can say. And I love that she's able to like have multiple like people and subjects in her pieces. Like it looks like a still from like a moment like that. It's just beautiful. I love her work. And of course the OG Romare Bearden, he is awesome, which we have an original piece right here. I don't know if you guys can see.
Oh, nice.
But yeah.
Nice.
So that's in my house. And he's able to make these large landscapes, which I love about that, like to be able to have a whole scene played out. I would love to get to that point where I'm able to make larger pieces and have multiple different things happening in scenes. So that's where that's a thought of, I've been thinking about that, going bigger and having things of that nature. What were you going to say, Brian? I think you were going to say something.
I was just going to say there's, in Bearden's work, it's like a complex tapestry that there's a lot of energy moving through it. Your work is working well because, for what you're working on right now, there is a calm simplicity to it. I feel like you're not trying to create this tapestry. You're focused in on these singular ideas, which is, interesting because you're working in collage, bringing all these pieces together, but you're working on these very straightforward, singular ideas, or at least they come across as this very straightforward concept in the end. And there's something in that simplicity that is quite elegant.
When I first started doing when I first started doing collage, I was making these really I don't think anyone's ever even seen them. I was making these really large pieces. I had so much going on, so many different ideas happening, and I was like, this is too much. It was really all over the place. Yeah. And that's when I was like, all right, how about we take a piece of it and turn that into a collage, and then that into I like being, as of right now, I do like the singular idea of focusing on like a portrait. They look like portraits, collage portraits, and having like Black woman with chicken, you have that singular person there, but there's elements that are being presented to you. So yeah, I do like the simplistic idea as well.
I feel like you can get so lost in a beard, and I mean, they're gorgeous, don't get me wrong, but the meaning sometimes gets diluted because you're trying to navigate through the thing. And I always, when I do critiques with students, say, try to say as much as you can with as little as you can, reduce, get rid of the extraneous. And so I think focusing on the single idea for you makes total sense.
Yes, for sure. And then the next one is Lorna Simpson, who's amazing and just did something with Rihanna, which I was in love with. So that's another goal, to have some commission work and be able to get my collage further out there and working with people. And
that just came out, right? Wasn't that something that just happened this week or last? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I believe it was for Essence, if I'm not mistaken. Right. Yes. Mm-hmm. Then we have Martha Rosler. Antonio introduced me to this collage artist. So, and then we have Kara Walker. And lastly,
when you work on your own, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off about Michelin Thomas, but working, do you ever think about this work or other artists' work while you're working? Or are you purely absorbed in your own processes? I mean, I know of painters who are thinking about somebody's piece, sometimes when I'm out photographing, I'm thinking about how somebody else photographed this. And not that it comes to imprint on your own work, but it certainly affects the way you see and perceive.
Oh yeah, for sure. I agree with you on when you're photographing, it's so many photographers that I'm like, oh my God, that piece was so amazing. I wonder if I can do something like that, or have an inspiration moment where it might have that same color or that same composed the same way, things of that. But for my collage, I try not to get too caught up in other people's work, because I don't want to have my work look the same or have any of the same comparisons. I mean, with collage, sometimes it's kind of hard not to, because a lot of people will replace eyes and make them larger, or do a lot of the similar things like Hannah Hawk is doing, or Lorna Simpson. But I try not to focus on them and just go my own path. But I feel like you can't help it sometimes, because you've already been exposed to it and you've seen it. So it's already drilled in your head. But yeah, I agree with you, but I try not to do that, so that I can just have my own lane to be in.
I don't think it's a bad thing to have your antecedents on your shoulders. I mean, that can't be a bad thing. Otherwise, you would do something and someone would say, Lorna Simpson did that in the 80s. Then you would be like, oh, crud,
Right.
Yeah, I think it's good to know what's out there, and you clearly are keeping your eyes peeled for whatever it is. But look at your list. You just curated a really beautiful show. They're all cousins, all those works.
Yes.
You have another career as a curator.
Oh God. Oh my goodness.
We had a comment another comment from Valerie Baird Smith, who I'm going to guess is a friend of yours, because she writes, Bria, I will collect old magazines from family members for you. I'm sure there will be lots of images you can use over a period of time.
Thank you, Grandma. Jeez, Louise. Like, what a grandma thing to do.
You'll know what you're getting for your birthday this year.
That's fine. I need it. Thank you. I appreciate that.
We had a short talk yesterday just to go over a couple things. And one of the things we started talking about was scale, and the idea that the works that are at the gallery are photos of the collages at a larger scale, right? And you wanted to see what happened when they got enlarged a bit, which I think is cool. And then we sort of got off on this topic about, wouldn't it be cool if you could, get tons of posters or billboards or something and really go crazy? And when you sent me that article about Bearden and collaging yesterday, and I was reading through it, there was this whole discussion about him projecting his collages as a overhead projector or whatever he was using at a larger size as a way to sort of expand the ideas of it, which I thought was really interesting, and it could be fun to play with.
Yes, definitely. I've just from speaking to you, I've been thinking about that and what can I do to achieve larger pieces, even though I might not be able to get 50-foot magazines to be able to cut out of, but that's definitely something that's constantly going through my head, is how can I make my pieces larger without having to just like take a picture of it and enlarge it. So I love the projection idea. I love, I don't know. I've been thinking about that. So that's definitely in the back of my head for sure.
Well, and the other thing that came up in that article was the idea of Warhol taking those newspaper photographs and silk screening them at a larger size. So I know you haven't had silk screening, or maybe you have, but
no, I haven't.
That's something else to think about. Like maybe you could incorporate that as a way to base the image. Or I don't know. We'll have to talk about it later.
Yes, definitely. Oh, go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
It's interesting that you guys were talking about that. I mean, Bria, when we first started talking about your originals, Liz Faust and I had that conversation with you months and months ago. We had this thought about them, and you had given it to us, that the originals are almost your plate for the work, which is why we then, we're making these limited edition fine art prints from them. And that the original itself was precious. And Ann and I have had conversations about this. We've had a number of conversations with other people about this idea of the collage itself being a starting point for the production of the imagery. I think some people would go into almost argument mode about whether that's okay or not. Could you talk about that? Like, I mean, how do you, when you are working on these originals, I mean, your intention was to maybe make more prints out of them, but you can't do that because you have this original piece that you made by hand. But it's not unlike another medium that was made to reproduce. Sculptures are, massive sculptures are even reproduced more than one time from an original mold or something. So can you talk about that and like your connection to the collage itself, and then also the concept of producing this limited edition?
Yes. I love my original collages. And I was talking to Anne about that. She's like, at one point you're going to have to let them go. And I'm like, they're just, the fact that there's only one of them is what gets me. And like, I can't find those pieces again. Like,
right.
Once that magazine is done and sold and whatever, like I don't think I can go back and find that same magazine unless I really do like some intense searching.
Right.
But that's it. Like that's it for that piece. And I love them, and I put a lot of time into them. And I know like at some point I'm gonna have to cut the tie, but yeah, the original is definitely very important to me. And the second question was, repeat that, please.
I mean, I don't. When we talked, I didn't have any problem with it. I'm like, well, it'd be no different than spending weeks or months on some print that you're getting ready to make prints. A plate that you're getting ready to make prints for, a wood block that you're getting ready to make prints out of, and all these types of things. I don't see that, but there are longstanding traditions about what's acceptable to reproduce and what's not, and I think that's a question. It's a legitimate question for folks, but we were just kind of thinking about, well, you already said it, the accessibility of having some more than just this one thing accessible to multiple people, and it kind of plays into the idea that these are from mass-produced imagery that millions or hundreds of thousands of people have seen or have had exposure to. So,
yeah, that's a good point.
Well, and playing with the multiplicity is something that the printmaking people, that's part of the democratic nature of the art. Like, they want to get the message out. They have 100 of them. 100 people can have the same picture, and the passion and the idea can be spread that much farther. And for the works that you're doing, there's definite messages in all of them, and it makes sense that there should be more than one. So I agree. If I were collecting it, I would buy the collages from you, but I can get on board with the multiplicity.
Yeah, yeah, I'm down for that. I'm definitely down for multiple people going to buy and having them, and yeah, so I don't have a problem with that. It's just the original might have to just be held on to a little longer.
Good idea, Bria.
George said something in the chat, I believe.
Yeah, George Sissel, yeah. He's suggesting that you add Benny Andrews to your list of people to look at. He is a painter, but he does incorporate collage in his work, and he's something. He's great.
Yeah. And just have a moment, just to remind people that are joining us, you can write it in the chat. We've got about 10 or 15 minutes left, and we'd love to hear more questions or comments about the work. If you've been to the gallery, thoughts on in person, just to let our viewers know, Full Circle is open to the public 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 Saturdays. If you feel comfortable, please come down. There's never too many people in the building, and our gallery is fairly intimate, so you can see the show, take it all in, ask some questions, and then be out of here pretty quickly. If you prefer to make an appointment, you can also call or email the studio. So let us know if there's any more questions. Okay.
I worry always about what it is the artist wants to say, and the fact that you can't control what the audience will bring to the work. Mm-hmm. So some audience may look at the whole idea of the darkness of the skin and not understand that that's a thing, or that the hair is like, I don't know how to quite make everybody come to it on an even playing field. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right. So, I mean, I don't think it will ever be an even playing field, because everyone has their own experiences, and they might not, and not the non-Black and Brown community have had completely different experiences than a Black and Brown person. So, which I feel like my work would be probably more relatable to that group, and I don't make the work to teach anything or to, that's when I'm making it, that's not my intent. My intent is to share a part of me and to express myself, and to put visually, making that visual statement and articulating that in that manner. It's awesome if people can open a conversation about it and they go and research about it, or want to dive deeper into those conversations. But again, when I'm in the process of making these, it's up to the viewer to interpret what they choose to interpret. But some of my pieces are more blatant than others, and that's just how it is, I guess.
it's hard to bring everyone's considerations into view as an artist when you're making work. It just can't happen. I mean, art is meant to be viewed and absorbed and talked about. And it's really in like events like these and learning more about the work that you understand some of the deeper meanings behind things. But anything's going to have a potential, this way perspective or this way perspective on any of the work. I mean, I think with your work though, there is an obvious point. Not that you're trying to teach anybody, but there is something that comes across that there's more here than just an aesthetic collection of objects.
Yes,
There's
definitely.
something else going on, and I think that I won't call it subtle because in some it's not so subtle. But I think that element is what captures people and draws them into a conversation with the piece. And I think that's really important. You cannot cater to everyone and expect everyone to get the same information out,
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
I feel like it's your work is successful because you're using mass-produced images. People sort of get that right away, right? They're comfortable in that, looking at that kind of imagery, and it will draw them in, because then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, what is going on here? And so, getting people to stop for more than 3.5 seconds is, I think, what we're after, right? And thinking
Yes.
harder about it. And I think that your approach to it is working.
Thank you.
I feel like I had another question, but I can't think of it.
Why don't you tell us, since we're coming to the last little bit of the talk, can you tell us what you're working on now or what's next in your process? If you've started any new pieces, fill us in.
Yeah, I definitely am in the process of, I'm going to start working on some new things, because I've had about like 20 people inbox me like, what's next? And I'm like, okay, I'm still trying to ride the high of this right now. But yeah, I guess everyone's telling me to get back to it. So I'm probably going to do an extension of what I've been talking about. But I also, I want to start expanding and figuring out, what's the next step for me. But I know I've been applying to residencies. It's my senior year, so this is my last semester. So, school is an opportunity for me to experiment and, figure out what the game plan is once I graduate. But I definitely know, like, I want to do a residency. I want to travel, and I don't know if I'm going to do grad school or not, but I definitely know I want to do residencies and just more shows and more group shows and more solo shows. I just want to keep going up from here, from this opportunity.
Well, we're glad that, I mean, you discovered us first more than we discovered you first. You came in here for services to Full Circle Fine Art, and we started taking notice of the work, and that's partly how this conversation started today. It's from many, many months ago that happening. And, I think that there's a lot of opportunity for conversation around this work. Honestly, it's been you'd think that people would feel some restrictions on coming out, but people have been safely coming down to the gallery more so than we've seen almost all year to see your show. They're very fascinating work, and they are definitely different in person, as most work is. Seeing it online is one thing. It's great that we can give access to people who aren't comfortable coming down to the gallery to your imagery, but it certainly is special to come down and see them at scale in the gallery space. I would encourage people to check out the work in multiple venues. We have fullcirclephotogallery.com. There's a little bit of our exhibition schedule and Bria's work there. Our our online marketplace presence is actually on artsy.net under Catalyst Contemporary, which is another gallery that we run, and all of our artists at Full Circle and Catalyst can be found there. So, you know, your work will be available here. We've actually decided to extend the show through the end of January, so that it's not ending today, so people can enjoy the work for a few more weeks. And of course, if people have any questions about coming to see the work in the gallery, they can contact us at our email, which is gallery@fullcirclephoto.com or info@fullcirclephoto.com. And you can come check out the show, or if you want to send a message to Bria through us, you can do that as well. But if there are no more, are there any more chat questions for us to address?
There was one comment from Candace Fong that said, "The work looks incredible. Looking forward to your future projects."
Thank you, Candace. And
yeah, I thought you have a bright future, Bria. We're ready to watch you rise.
Yeah.
Thank you. I had a question. And people are allowed to, are they able to buy smaller prints, or are we just selling the larger prints?
Currently, the work in the gallery is at about 24 inches on the long side. So the images themselves are about 20 with a couple inches around as part of the print edition.
Gotcha.
And you know, we haven't settled yet on any of the smaller sized editions.
Okay. Just curious.
But if people are interested in the work, you know, when people are interested in actually purchasing work, they will make contact with us and talk to us about all sorts of things. So if someone's interested in work, you know, it's important that they start a conversation with us on many levels. So I encourage that.
Awesome.
Bria, thank you so much for sharing your work with us, not just today, but throughout the last month and a half. We're very honored to be working with you and really appreciate your time. And thanks for conversing with us today as well.
Thank you, Anne.
I hope everyone will stay in touch with us. We have a lot of our artist talks up on our YouTube channel under Full Circle, and there are more under Catalyst Contemporary as well. Stay in touch for future events, and thank you so much and good afternoon. See you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.